I was 18 the first time I realized just how disposable I was to my own parents. Not in a dramatic teenage way, not in the slam the door, you never listen to me kind of way. No, I mean really, truly disposable. Like a cracked mug they didn't even bother trying to fix before tossing it in the trash. My name's Kyle, and if you asked anyone in my family back then, they'd probably tell you I was the quiet one, the dependable one, the kid who kept his grades up, worked part-time at the gas station down the street, and still managed to make dinner a few nights a week because both mom and dad worked late. I didn't mind. I figured if I just stayed out of trouble, didn't make waves, kept doing the right thing, it would all pay off somehow. You know? Like maybe I wasn't the smartest, or the funniest, or even the favorite, but I was steady. I was loyal, and that had to mean something. My younger brother, Dylan, was the opposite. 2 years younger, 14 going on 40. He had the charm, the dimples, the way of twisting a story until it came out like spun sugar in your ears. Everyone loved Dylan. Teachers, coaches, grandma, the neighbor who once caught him sneaking a joint behind the shed. She just smiled and said, "Boys will be boys." And my parents? They ate it up like gospel. I don't think it was malicious at first, just easier. Dylan made them laugh. I made them grocery lists. Dylan got detention for cheating on a quiz. He's just bored with school. I pulled a B- in AP Bio. What happened to your focus? But still, I didn't resent him. Not really. He was my brother. I figured the world would catch up with him one day, and maybe then we'd be on even ground. The house we grew up in wasn't warm, exactly. It wasn't cold, either. Just practical. Rules posted on the fridge in laminated sleeves. Chores rotated on a chart. Affection was rare, but functional. A pat on the back if you did well. Not bad if you made honor roll. I wasn't the kind of kid who needed much, just a little fairness. A little trust. So when it happened, when the whole damn thing unraveled, I wasn't even angry at first. Just confused. Stunned, really. Like I'd slipped into someone else's life and couldn't find the script. It was a Friday. Early spring. I remember because the weather had just started warming up and I'd taken my hoodie off for the first time walking home from work. I was still in my red and white Petromart uniform. Smelled like burnt coffee and stale air freshener. I just walked through the door when my mom came charging into the hallway like she'd been waiting for me to cross a tripwire. "Where is it?" she snapped. I blinked. "Where's what?" "Don't play dumb." "The cash. Dylan said you took it from his room." At first, I genuinely thought it was a joke. Like maybe he'd misplaced his allowance or something. But her face was stone. Her arms crossed like she was bracing for impact. "Mom, I just got off work. I haven't even been home since this morning." "Don't lie to me, Kyle." Her voice cracked, not with doubt, but anger. Like she was offended I'd even try to defend myself. "He said he had $300 saved from Christmas and his birthday. It's gone. And your backpack was in his room this afternoon." I looked at her like she'd grown a second head. "What? Why would I even be in his room?" "Maybe because you wanted money? You've been stressed about car repairs, haven't you?" The thing was, yes, my car had been acting up. A busted starter. I'd been walking to work all week. But the idea that I'd go into my brother's room and steal from him? That I'd wait until he wasn't home, sneak in like a thief? "I didn't take anything," I said quietly. And that was the moment something in her expression hardened. Like she'd already made up her mind. Like I was no longer her son, but a threat that needed to be neutralized. Dad came in a few minutes later, still in his suit from work. She briefed him quickly, and just like that, the jury was in. No questioning Dylan. No checking the rest of the house. No asking me anything past that first explosion. Just, "You need to leave," Dad said. I looked at him, waiting for the "just until we sort this out," or "just for the night." But he didn't add anything. "Are you serious?" My voice cracked worse than I expected. "You're kicking me out over a lie? You've been distant lately. Angry. This kind of behavior doesn't come from nowhere." "Dad, I didn't do anything." He didn't flinch. "Then maybe spending the night somewhere else will help you think about that." I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I just walked to my room in a daze, grabbed my backpack and my phone, and left. It wasn't until I was halfway down the block that I realized I had no idea where I was going. No close friends nearby. No spare keys to anyone's place. Just a dead car and a crumpled $5 bill in my pocket. So I walked. For hours. Eventually ended up at the bus station downtown, slumped against a bench with my hoodie pulled tight and my stomach growling. I don't think I slept more than 10 minutes at a time. The flicker of overhead lights, The occasional bark from some guy arguing with the vending machine, the constant shuffle of footsteps, it all blurred into one long, hollow stretch of time. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mom's face. My dad's silence. Dylan's smug little half-smile as he stood behind them during the whole thing, not saying a word. I waited 2 days before going back. 2 full days of silence. No texts. No missed calls. Not even a "where are you" from anyone. When I finally walked through the front door again, pale and stiff and cracked from the inside out, they barely looked up from the TV. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. Because 3 weeks later, we had a family barbecue. Grandma's 70th. Everyone was there. Cousins, aunts, uncles, the works. And that's when Dylan, in front of half the family, decided to tell the story. Not with shame. Not with guilt. But like it was a punchline. "You should have seen Kyle's face when Mom kicked him out," he laughed. "All over a fake 100 I printed for a prank. Didn't think they'd actually believe me." I froze mid-step, holding a plate of pasta salad. My heart started thudding so loud I couldn't hear the rest of the conversation. The blood drained from my face so fast I thought I might pass out. And Dylan? He just kept laughing, like it was some harmless childhood memory. And that's when I saw Grandpa. Quiet, stoic Grandpa, standing just behind Dylan, holding something in his hand. Something black, rectangular, familiar. A security camera DVR. And suddenly, I wasn't the one trembling anymore. Dylan was. Because he hadn't known Grandpa had cameras installed at the house when he came to fix the garage 2 months earlier, or that one of them pointed directly at the hallway outside both our rooms. I didn't say anything right away. I just stood there, paper plate in hand, heart thumping in my ears, watching Dylan's face shift as he caught sight of Grandpa behind him. First came the confusion, head cocked, brows raised. Then recognition. Then something darker. Fear. Regret. Maybe even guilt. But it passed too quickly. The smirk came back, and he tried to laugh it off. "Come on, Grandpa," Dylan said, voice wobbling. "Don't tell me you're still messing with that garage cam thing." Grandpa didn't respond. He just stepped forward, set the DVR down on the patio table like it was a loaded weapon, and quietly said, "I think it's time we watch something." The conversation died around us. Cousins went quiet. My Uncle Peter paused mid-bite. Even Mom, who'd been bragging about Dylan's mathlete trophy to Aunt Maria, turned around with a polite, confused smile. "Dad, what are you doing?" she asked. Grandpa didn't look at her. "I was checking the wiring a few months back. Installed a camera to watch the driveway after the neighbor's car got keyed. Didn't mean to catch anything else. But it's all there." The silence was suffocating. I didn't move. My hands had gone cold. Dylan tried again. "It was a prank. Just a joke. We already moved past it. Kyle's fine, aren't you?" He looked at me like I was supposed to rescue him. Like I'd laugh along and let him off the hook. But I couldn't even meet his eyes. I was stuck in the moment. I had spent 2 nights on a freezing plastic bench with nothing but a vending machine apple juice and the sound of strangers coughing in the dark. I was reliving every second of standing in that hallway while my parents looked at me like a stranger. Like a criminal. Grandpa pressed play. The image on the screen was grainy, black and white, but clear enough. The camera showed the upstairs hallway. My backpack sitting by the stairs, exactly where I'd left it before work that day. Then Dylan appeared. Shirtless. Hair a mess. He tiptoed toward his room, glanced around, opened the zipper of my bag, pulled out one of his fake bills from a drawer in his room, and dropped it inside. He looked straight into the hallway, toward the camera, and grinned. Then he walked back to his room like nothing happened. Grandpa didn't say a word. Just let the silence stretch. The weight of it settled over the whole party. You could practically hear the collective shift, like everyone's mental image of Dylan had just tilted sideways and cracked. Dylan's voice was small. That's not what it looks like." But it was exactly what it looked like. I should have felt vindicated. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt hollow, like the damage had already been done and no amount of "I told you so" could fix it. My mom's face turned pale. Dad's jaw tightened, but he didn't say anything. Not even to me. Not yet. The barbecue fizzled out after that. People left early. Grandpa packed up the DVR and drove off without another word. Dylan disappeared inside, and I just stood there on the back porch for a long time, trying to decide whether to scream or cry or laugh like a lunatic. But that wasn't the breaking point. Not yet. That came later. Things didn't go back to normal. Not really. There were awkward apologies, stiff ones, Mom said things like, "We didn't have the full picture," and "You should have said something sooner." Dad mumbled something about stress at work, but none of it landed. None of it reached that part of me that had gone cold the night they shut the door in my face. Dylan didn't get punished. Not really. He got grounded for a week, but that just meant no Xbox. No family meeting. No consequences. No forced apology. He didn't even seem sorry. In fact, he started acting like he was the victim. Like he was the one who got betrayed because Grandpa spied on him. And my parents? They just wanted it to go away. Swept under the rug like everything else. "We need to move forward," my mom said one night at dinner, not looking me in the eye. As a family. But the damage had already carved deep. They didn't notice how quiet I became. How I stopped coming home right after work. How I spent hours in the library or wandering aimlessly through the mall just to avoid going home. They didn't notice when I dropped weight, when I started missing meals, when I turned down every attempt at small talk. They only noticed when I pushed back. One night, about a month later, Dylan came into my room without knocking. He threw a rolled-up sock at me, smirking like we were buddies again. "Hey, I need your laptop. Mine's dead." I didn't look up from my desk. "No." He scoffed. "Dude, come on. Just for an hour." I turned, slow. "You want my laptop? The guy you framed and got kicked out of the house." He rolled his eyes. "We're still on that." That was it. I stood up. "Get out." He raised his hands, mocking. Okay, geez." He backed out of the room, but not before muttering. "Still acting like a martyr, huh?" That night, I locked my door for the first time. The next day, I changed the password on everything. I stopped leaving my phone unattended. I started keeping my backpack with me at all times, even in the house. And when Mom asked me if I was okay, I just smiled and said, "Great." If they didn't care enough to protect me, I'd protect myself. But things kept getting worse. I found out from a friend at school that Dylan had started telling people I had mental health issues. That I was paranoid, obsessed with being the victim, and twisting stories to get attention. He said I made up the story about being kicked out. That I chose to sleep at the bus station to guilt trip our parents. He even showed people the security footage, but only part of it. Just enough to make it look like a misunderstanding. He claimed it was an experiment for a psych project. That I overreacted. That Grandpa took it out of context. My reputation took a hit. Teachers treated me weird. Friends got distant. One even asked me if I was off my meds. That was when the anger finally caught up with the hurt. Because they didn't just ruin a weekend. They didn't just throw me out of my home. They let my name rot in public. They let him spin lie after lie until I didn't even recognize the person people thought I was. But the worst came the night I overheard a conversation I wasn't supposed to. I was walking past the living room when I heard Dad's voice, low and sharp. I paused just behind the corner. "I'm not saying we should ignore it," he said, "but Dylan's record matters. He's got a real chance at a scholarship, and we can't let one stupid prank ruin that." Mom sighed. "I know, but Kyle's so cold lately. Like he wants us to suffer." Dad's voice turned bitter. "He's always been dramatic. You remember the science fair in 6th grade? The meltdown over the ribbon? He's got that black and white thinking. It's always, I'm the victim with him." I stood there in the dark hallway, gripping the edge of the wall, feeling like a ghost in my own house. That's when I knew. They didn't believe me. Not really. Not in their bones. They wanted to believe me, because it was convenient, because it avoided conflict, but they still saw Dylan as the golden boy. And me? I was a stain they were trying to scrub out with polite smiles and forced meals. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't eat the next morning. I just stared at the ceiling and ran the same thought in a loop. They won't protect you. They never will. And that's when the shift happened. Quiet. Subtle. But permanent. I stopped hoping they'd change. I stopped expecting justice. I stopped thinking about what I wanted from them. Instead, I started thinking about what they had to lose. But I didn't do anything. Not yet. Because revenge takes patience. And Dylan? He wasn't done digging his own grave. Not by a long shot. The week after that conversation, I stopped being Kyle, the older brother. At least in their eyes. I was still there, technically. Still breathing under their roof. Still paying for my own gas when I could scrape enough tips together. Still folding laundry in silence because the machine was downstairs, and I didn't feel like getting into another who left their socks in the dryer argument. But emotionally, mentally, I was gone. Something in me had shut off. That last little flicker of faith I had in them. That sliver of belief that maybe they'd realize how badly they'd failed me, snapped clean. After that, it was just survival. Eyes forward, mouth shut. Keep your head down and your hands clean. For the first time in my life, I stopped trying to prove myself. I didn't want their approval anymore. I didn't want them to like me or believe me or clap when I did well. I wanted distance, space, a way out. And that's when the fall really started. It came slowly, quietly, like a leak in the ceiling you don't notice until it's warped the whole floor. It started with school. My grades slipped, just a little at first. I'd always been a straight A student, the kind who double-checked homework and showed up early for exams. But suddenly, I didn't care. I couldn't focus. I'd sit in class staring at the whiteboard, watching the letters blur into static. Teachers noticed. Some pulled me aside, asked if everything was okay. I said it was. They nodded and moved on. Then came work. I started showing up late, missing shifts, forgetting to stock the coolers or sweep the floor. My manager, Brian, an older guy with bad knees and a permanently exhausted voice, tried to give me chances. He liked me, or at least he used to. But eventually, even he had to cut me loose. "We're just not getting the same Kyle anymore," he said, patting my shoulder like he was sorry. I nodded, left my name tag on the counter, and walked out without a word. I didn't tell my parents I got fired. Didn't want to give them another reason to pretend they were disappointed in me. Not that they asked. As long as Dylan was doing well, captaining the math team, winning debate tournaments, flashing that charming grin, they didn't care what shadows I was disappearing into. I hit rock bottom a few weeks later. I had no job, no money, no friends left who hadn't swallowed Dylan's version of things. One afternoon, I found myself sitting in the parking lot of an old strip mall, staring at a half-eaten sandwich I couldn't afford, wondering if this was it. If this was what the rest of my life was going to feel like. And then something strange happened. My phone buzzed. It was a text. From Grandpa. "You free this weekend? I could use some help with the cabin." The cabin. It was a rundown old place about an hour outside town, tucked in the woods near a lake. Grandpa used to take me there every summer when I was little. Fishing trips. Bonfires. Stories about the stars. It hadn't come up in years. I stared at the screen for a long time, then typed back one word. Sure. That weekend changed everything. Not overnight. Not in some dramatic, life-altering way. But it was the first time in months I felt like someone actually saw me. Grandpa didn't ask questions. He didn't prod or pity. He just handed me a toolbox and pointed at a broken gutter. "I need a second pair of hands," he said. "You still know how to climb a ladder?" I nodded and got to work. We spent the whole weekend fixing things. Cleaning out the crawl space, sanding the porch, hauling branches out of the driveway. At night, we sat by the fire with mugs of black coffee and the sound of crickets filling the quiet. He didn't ask me about Dylan. He didn't bring up the barbecue. But he did say this: "You don't owe anyone forgiveness just because they share your last name." I didn't reply, just nodded slowly, staring into the flames. It was the first time I felt like my anger wasn't a burden. Like maybe I wasn't crazy. Like maybe I had a right to feel betrayed. That Sunday, before I left, Grandpa handed me a thick envelope. "It's not much," he said, "but it's enough to get the wheels turning." Inside were $500 in cash, a list of local job openings he'd circled in the newspaper, and a copy of the cabin key. "I want you to fix this place up. Use it. Stay here on weekends if you need to. Just build something for yourself. Away from them." I almost cried. Instead, I said, "Thank you," and meant it more than I'd meant anything in years. That was the beginning of the rise. I applied for 3 jobs that week. Got interviews at 2. Took a part-time gig working at a hardware store where the owner, a gruff woman named May, didn't care about my GPA or family drama, just that I showed up and didn't break things. The first paycheck wasn't much, but it was enough to refill my gas tank and buy new work boots. I started spending weekends at the cabin, cleaning it, painting it, replacing the busted windows one by one. I brought my own groceries, made my own meals, slept in my own bed. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. I started reading again. Books I actually liked. Psychology, philosophy, home repair manuals. I even started journaling, something I'd always thought was dumb until I realized how much of my life I'd been bottling up. The journal became a safe place, a map of where I'd been and where I wanted to go. And slowly, things started clicking. I applied for a community college course in construction technology. Something practical, something I could do with my hands. Got in. Started classes in the evenings. Studied late into the night by candlelight when the power flickered at the cabin. No one knew. Not my parents. Not Dylan. I didn't tell them because I didn't need them to know. This was mine. Back at home, things were tense. Mom kept trying to pretend everything was normal. She'd ask how school was going, even though she had no idea I wasn't in the same program anymore. Dad barely spoke to me. And Dylan? Dylan had slipped back into his usual smug rhythm. Only now, there was an edge to it. A twitch in his confidence. Like he knew something had changed, but he couldn't quite put his finger on it. I didn't argue. I didn't push back. I let him believe I was still broken, still bitter, still stuck in the shadow he thought he cast over me. But I watched. I listened. And what I heard changed everything. It was late one night. I was in the kitchen, heating up leftovers, when I heard Dylan on the phone in the den. His voice was low, but the walls in our house weren't exactly soundproof. Yeah, but if I say he threatened me, Dylan was whispering, they'll have to take it seriously. He's already got the reputation. I just need someone to vouch for it. Pause. No, I'm not lying. I'm just exaggerating. Another pause. I don't care if he gets kicked out. Honestly, it's about time. He's just dragging everything down. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. I just stood there, bowl in hand, while something icy slid down my spine. He wasn't done. Not by a long shot. And now? Now he was planning to push me out completely. That night, I drove to the cabin and sat on the porch until sunrise. Because I realized something important. Dylan didn't just want attention. He didn't just want to be the favorite. He wanted to erase me. He wanted me gone, not just from the house, but from the story entirely. And for the first time in my life, I felt something shift deep in my chest. Not fear. Not sadness. Focus. He thought I was still the quiet older brother. But he had no idea who I'd become. I wasn't playing defense anymore. I was building something. And soon, I was going to show them all what that looked like. Revenge doesn't start with rage. It starts with silence. With stillness. With watching the pieces move on their own. Until you finally decide it's your turn to move one back. That night on the porch, watching the sky turn from ink to ash, I started sketching out the first pieces of a plan. Not some wild scheme with fireworks and courtroom drama. No, I wasn't looking to humiliate Dylan in front of the whole school or burn down our house in a blaze of vengeance. I didn't want noise. I wanted certainty. I wanted Dylan to dig his own hole, thinking he was winning, until the dirt was so high around his neck that even Mom and Dad couldn't pretend not to see it. I just had to hand him the shovel. The first step was getting proof. Real, undeniable, ironclad evidence. I knew what he'd been planning, trying to frame me again. But if I confronted him, he'd weasel out of it like always. He'd twist it into a misunderstanding or just a joke, and our parents would nod along like they always did. So instead, I played along. I went quiet again, kept my head down, started acting off, left my door unlocked, left my bag out, left my phone charging in the open, made it look like I was slipping again. Dylan started circling within 2 days. Little comments. You feeling okay, man? You've been kinda spaced lately. You sure everything's cool? I nodded, said I was just tired. And the moment I saw him watching me a little too long from the hallway mirror, I knew he was starting to line something up. So I turned the cabin into my war room. I bought 2 small cameras off Craigslist for cash. Nothing fancy, just motion-triggered, with Wi-Fi upload and a 2-week loop. I spent a weekend learning how to configure them, then carefully installed one behind the bookshelf in my room, angled perfectly at the door and my desk. The other? I stashed inside an old portable speaker in the hallway, pointed toward my room. Both were synced to an old laptop I kept at the cabin, completely offline. No one knew, especially not Dylan. The next step was harder, rebuilding my reputation. See, the lies he'd told still lingered. Some teachers still gave me side eyes. A few classmates flinched when I passed in the hall, like I might explode into a breakdown at any moment. But I wasn't trying to win everyone back. Just a few key people. So I started showing up early to class, quietly offering help to the students who struggled, especially the ones Dylan had charmed and then ghosted when they stopped being useful. I volunteered at the school workshop after hours, helping refurbish old furniture with Mr. Henley, the shop teacher with hands like oak roots and a memory like a steel trap. I didn't talk much, didn't bring up my brother, just kept showing up. Reliable, consistent, useful. It took a few weeks, but the whispers started to change. Hey, Cal helped me with that trig homework. He's actually chill. Didn't know he was in the shop program. Dude smart. Even Mr. Henley, who hadn't said more than 3 words to me all year, gave me a nod one evening. Good hands. Steady. You ever think about an apprenticeship? I didn't say it out loud, but that was the moment I knew. I wasn't trapped anymore. I was building a way out. Now I just needed to give Dylan enough rope to hang himself. And, as usual, he delivered. About a month after the hallway recording, I came home late from the cabin one Sunday night. When I got to my room, my phone, normally locked and charging by my desk, was sitting on my pillow. Screen cracked. Battery low. And when I turned it on, half my apps were rearranged. Classic mistake. Amateur mistake. I didn't say anything. Just grabbed the speaker from the hallway, popped out the hidden card, and drove back to the cabin that night. The footage showed exactly what I expected. Dylan creeping into my room, checking the hallway first, picking up my phone, unlocking it. He'd been watching me type the code, opening apps, scrolling through my messages, taking photos of my journal, then pocketing the phone and disappearing for 20 minutes before dropping it back. I watched the clip 3 times. Then I made a copy, and another, stored one on a flash drive taped to the back of a drawer at the hardware store, uploaded one to cloud storage under a burner Gmail, saved another on a hidden partition of Grandpa's old laptop. I wasn't going to lose this one. At that point, I was almost ready. But I needed one last thing, someone on the inside. Someone in the family who saw what was happening but wasn't too far gone to admit it. And that's when Aunt Melissa came back into the picture. She was my mom's younger sister. Used to live out of state, but moved back to town after her divorce. She showed up at family dinners again, a little older, a little rougher around the edges, but sharp. Always had a sixth sense for tension. One night, during a small dinner at Grandma's, she pulled me aside on the porch while everyone else was fawning over Dylan's Student of the Month plaque. "You look like you're planning something," she said, lighting a cigarette with one hand. "And I don't think I want to stop you." I raised an eyebrow. "That obvious?" She blew out a stream of smoke. "I know your brother. Always thought he was a snake in a varsity jacket." That was all I needed. I handed her a thumb drive the next day. "If anything happens to me," I said, "you make sure this gets shown to Grandpa." She took it without hesitation. "I'll do you one better," she said. "I'll keep it in my safe." Just like that, I had an ally. The final piece fell into place at a school fundraiser. Dylan was scheduled to give a short speech, something about student leadership and ambition. My parents were beaming. Mom had her phone ready to record. Dad had even ironed his shirt. They invited me to come, like they were offering me a crumb of dignity. I smiled, said sure. That night, I sat in the crowd, calm and patient. I watched Dylan step onto the stage with his polished charm, that practiced smile, that perfect posture. I even applauded with everyone else. Then, as he started speaking, I pulled out my phone, opened the Dropbox link, watched, in real time, as Dylan's face appeared on screen in black and white, creeping into my room, stealing my phone, smiling like the little king he thought he was. I watched it again. Then I texted the link to my mom, to my dad, and to every teacher Dylan had mentioned by name in his application essays. Then I turned off my phone, leaned back in my seat, and listened to him talk about integrity. It was almost poetic. And I wasn't done. Because that wasn't the revenge. That was just the ignition. The explosion was coming next. I left before the fundraiser ended. Not because I was scared. Because I'd already won. I slipped out of the auditorium just as Dylan hit the climax of his speech, some canned metaphor about rising together like a tide of ambition, and walked through the cold night air to my car. The cabin key sat in my pocket. The engine purred to life. And as I pulled out of the lot, I could already feel it beginning. The shift. It's a strange thing, knowing you've lit the fuse. That any minute now, the life someone built on lies is about to go up in smoke. And you won't have to raise your voice, throw a punch, or even be in the room when it happens. All you have to do is wait. The first fallout hit the next morning. I woke up in the cabin, birds chirping like they hadn't just witnessed a social nuclear detonation. I made coffee, showered, and sat out on the porch in flannel and boots while checking my email. For unread messages. 3 were from teachers. 1 was from Principal Hartley. Every message had the same undertone. "We need to talk about what we saw." Apparently, not long after Dylan's speech ended, my mom's phone had buzzed during the applause. She'd opened the video in full view of the parents seated beside her. Word spread quickly. Someone, a friend of a teacher, I think, projected the clip on the whiteboard during cleanup. Dylan never even made it off the school grounds before the whispers started. By morning, the video was everywhere. Teachers, students, scholarship committees, even the student council Discord server, where someone posted it under the caption, "Student of the Month caught acting like a Bond villain." Dylan didn't go to school that day, or the next, or the next. At home, my parents cracked. Dad stormed into my room Wednesday night, holding his phone like it was covered in acid. "Did you do this?" he asked, voice sharp and bitter. "I sent a video," I said calmly. "The rest happened on its own." He stared at me, mouth twitching like he wanted to yell, but couldn't figure out what for. "You embarrassed this family." "No," I said, standing. "Dylan embarrassed this family. I just told the truth." He looked away, didn't say a word, didn't apologize, just walked out, shutting the doors softly behind him like I was a guest in my own house. Mom tried a softer approach the next day. Knocked gently, brought up how people make mistakes, and he's your brother. I asked her if she remembered kicking me out over a lie. She left in tears. I didn't follow. Dylan's fall was slow, ugly, and public. His scholarship application was withdrawn. His student council position was revoked. The school board launched an ethics inquiry, which was a fancy way of saying, "We're finding a reason to distance ourselves from this mess." His friends dropped him. His social media turned into a battlefield. Half, "Leave him alone." Half, "Wow, what a manipulative freak." But the worst came when Grandpa found out. Aunt Melissa handed him the original footage and the full audio of Dylan's hallway conversation, the one where he talked about framing me again. Grandpa didn't raise his voice, didn't rant. He just called a family meeting. Kitchen. Sunday. No excuses. Everyone showed up. Mom, Dad, Dylan, me. Aunt Melissa sat at the end of the table, sipping coffee with one eyebrow raised like she was watching a live episode of a true crime show. Grandpa stood. "I'm not here to mediate," he said, his voice low and even. "I'm here to set things right." He plugged in a flash drive, played the video again, this time on the living room TV. The full version, the hallway footage, the room footage, the audio of Dylan conspiring to smear me. All of it. No one spoke. When it ended, Dylan looked up with bloodshot eyes and whispered, "I didn't think it'd go this far." Grandpa stared him down. "You made it go this far." Then he turned to my parents. "You too," he said, pointing. "Owe Kyle more than an apology. You owe him your damn respect." Dad flinched like he'd been slapped. Mom burst into tears. From this point forward, Grandpa continued, "You don't get to pretend this didn't happen. You don't get to play neutral. You either own up to what you allowed, or you don't speak to me again." It was the only time I'd ever seen him furious. And yet, he didn't raise his voice once. He just stared at them. And for once, they had nothing to say. That night, I packed my things. Not in anger, not in exile, just done. Grandpa had already offered to let me stay at the cabin full time. Aunt Melissa even offered her guest room if I ever wanted something closer to town. But I didn't want pity. I just wanted space. Before I left, Dad stood in the doorway, awkward and stiff. "We weren't trying to hurt you," he said. I shrugged, slinging my bag over my shoulder. "But you did." He lowered his head. "What happens now?" I looked him in the eye. "I live my life. You live yours." And then I walked out. Life got quiet after that. Peaceful even. I got a full-time job working construction under Mr. Henley's brother. Started saving money. Took night classes. Learned how to build walls, lay brick, pour concrete. Real, solid things. Things that stayed where you put them. Things that couldn't be twisted by someone else's lies. I kept fixing up the cabin. Installed solar panels. Painted the deck. Built a fire pit out back where I'd sit at night and stare at the stars, wondering how long it had been since I last felt this free. Grandpa visited every Sunday. Sometimes we'd talk. Sometimes we'd just sit. But he always brought coffee and left a 20 on the table for groceries. Even though we both knew I had enough. I never asked for anything more. Neither did he. Dylan never recovered. He switched schools mid-year. Deleted all his social media. Last I heard, he was doing community service to make up for academic dishonesty and personal misconduct. His friends scattered. His charm fizzled. No one remembered the math trophies or the leadership speeches. They remembered the smirk on his face when he planted fake evidence in his brother's bag, and the footage of him pacing the hallway, whispering about exaggerating things to get me kicked out again. Funny how long a reputation takes to build, and how fast it crumbles. My parents tried to reach out a few times. text messages, voicemails, even a birthday card with a check and a note that said, "We're proud of you." I sent the check back. Didn't return the call. Some bridges don't need burning. They collapse on their own. It's been a year now. I've got savings, a certification in progress, a steady job, a truck that doesn't stall when it rains, a home with my name on the mailbox, and a lock only I hold the key to. I'm not angry anymore. Not bitter. Not broken. I'm just free. And I built that freedom with my own hands. From the ground up. With no help. No shortcuts. No family name carrying me. Just truth. Just grit. Just a quiet, steady climb out of the hole they pushed me into. And now, when I look back on it all, I don't think about the bus station or the cracked phone or the lies. I think about the moment Dylan realized the camera was rolling. The moment the golden boy saw the mirror held up to his face and finally saw what the rest of us had always known. And I think, that was the day I got my life back. That was the day I stopped surviving and started living. That was the day I won.